Jessica Minnis, myself, and Dr. Sophia Roll have been working on a project looking at the impact of large-scale resort development on small island communities. And we started this about 5 years ago, and we have done various surveys and looked at different islands. One of the islands is Abaco, another is Bimini, and a third is Exuma. And so what we did from those is take the results and apply it to the context of what have we learned from what are the lessons learned, basically. And in a lot of ways, tourism in Grand Bahama runs along the same lines as most of these islands because it is already established. So one of the things that we found in our studies was that the newer products or the newer destinations were actually much more positive about the economic and social impact of tourism, and which meant that Bimini was far more happy with the product than Abaco or Exuma. Both Abaco and Exuma found that tourism was far less of what it said it was going to be than it was, because they had found that a lot of the resorts that had opened had closed, and that the employment promised never really materialized. So ironically, in the case of Bimini, by 2016, the ferry that had caused the dredging of all the mangrove swamps had stopped coming. So we have destroyed a large part of the environment to produce a tourist product that is no longer functional. But it still offered, so Resorts World Bimini still offered jobs. In November of 2017, 150 of those jobs kind of temporarily went away. So there we have the economic impact. So what have we learned from this large-scale investment in tourism development? Well, one of the things we've learned is that it was too big for the island. And another thing that we've learned was that there was no real study to see how it could be sustained by the strategies they had in place. So the slides that we have up are just the beginnings of the island. So where I tended to focus was on the impact of the survey and then post-survey impact. And so we have administered another survey. So what do we see, especially in the case of Grand Bahama? Well, we've learned that first we need to keep ownership of the land, because in the case of Abaco, for example, Guanaki in particular, Baker's Bay has taken over an entire island and almost exclusively or single-handedly gotten rid of most of the inhabitants who were there before. So I think there were 150 households prior to, 175 households prior to Baker's Bay taking over. By 2016, there were 60 households remaining of Bahamians who were originally from Baker's Bay. Now, Baker's Bay is an interesting study because it's actually white Abaconians who are being pushed out by white Americans. So one thing that Kathleen Seeley actually points out is that we have learned that we can't trust the developers. We have to police them very carefully, and we have to have policies and regulations in place that do not allow them to step outside of the confines of the agreement. Unfortunately, that was not done in Baker's Bay, and since then, the environmental degradation has been huge, which is one of the reasons why they wanted to go to Baker's Bay, was because of the pristine environment. So while Baker's Bay has developed the resort, the other aspect of the development is houses for North Americans, so second home owners. And this has been an interesting balance, again, because they've been pushing out so many of the local, which is a part of the economic impact. what they're offering is jobs, but a lot of those jobs cannot go to Bahamians because the Bahamians on Baker's Bay or on Guana Key are not qualified, the same as on Bimini. So what we find is a migration in of people from Nassau or Freeport, which helps with unemployment in those places, but a migration out of Biminites and Abaconians. So we have it's compounded. And by the time 2017 rolled around in Bimini, the migration out had started again for the Biminites looking for employment. I know a lot of people from Freeport actually moved to Bimini to take up work at Resorts World, and that really has not worked out the way they thought it was going to work out. But there was always a lot of